The story begins in the 21st century when the so-called crystal beasts from the other world invaded the Earth. Conventional weapons were useless against them, but some people were able to grow monster eggs. As a result, they acquired demonic pets and nicknamed them crystallizers. Experts in this field have begun to enjoy the new era of such dangerous life. Meanwhile, the main character woke up and felt an incredible heaviness in his body. Looking around, the guy suddenly discovered that Lily was lying next to him. It was at this moment that the young master's phone rang, and looking at the phone, he realized that it was his sister. The young cultivator reached for his cell phone with difficulty and asked his sister to postpone their conversation. However, the girl reported extremely terrifying news. The teenager immediately jumped out of bed, saying that he would come now. Sleepy Lily, in turn, asked him what had happened and why he was alarmed. Upon learning that his sister was in trouble, the young lady volunteered to go with him to help her. Without thinking twice, the guy agreed, because there was not a minute to lose. At this time, the thugs literally pinned the girl against the wall, who claimed that her brother would arrive soon. One of them noted that he knew Chen, and he was indeed a good fighter. But now was the age of monsters. Suddenly, a huge demonic snake appeared from behind him, and the gang leader said that things would be tough for Shin. At the same time, his henchmen called their boss a certified crystallizer. After a certain amount of time, Chen burst in and shouted his little sister's name. The bandits were surprised by his arrival. Naively believing that he would not escape from their lair, Han urged him to behave diligently as the crystal beast would instantly calm Shin down. Zhao also demanded that he kneel before him and begin to ask for forgiveness for beating his ward, adding that after that he would play with his beloved little sister for a bit and then let her go. Han then turned his attention to Lily and noticed that he liked her too. He asked if Shin had decided to give him a double gift. The teenager could not stand such impudence and unexpectedly dealt him a crushing blow, telling him to immediately remove his dirty hands and never touch his girls again. After which Zhao flew to the side, his dragon immediately became alarmed. The stunned thug said that he had no right to touch him, and now he would pay for it. The extremely self-confident Chen replied that he loved looking at his frightened face. Han immediately prepared his violet snake for battle, who instantly directed the magic sphere towards the young man, but everything was not so simple. Because Yin managed to jump back in time and thus avoid the attack, Jiao generated a protective barrier that absorbed almost any damage. While the dragon's poison fell on his minions and began to corrode their bodies, shocked, Luna began to understand that this madman would be difficult to defeat, and she also became worried about her brother, who also generated a magical shield and stated that it doesn't take much intelligence to make the monster serve him. After which, Chen smiled and remarked that he hadn't seen his crystal beast yet. Zhao's expression changed abruptly, not understanding where the teenager could have gotten the demon from. A few seconds later, Lily literally soared into the air, her body enveloped in an unknown aura. Soon the girl was somewhat transformed and appeared in a completely different image. In fact, she turned out to be the leader of all the crystal beasts. However, in human form, the stunned Han could not believe what was happening. The amethyst snake instantly bowed its head to her, and Zhao ordered her to attack her. But the dragon stopped obeying his master, as a result of which he pressed a button on a small remote control. The collar on the monster immediately released an electric discharge that shocked him. An extremely indignant Lily stated that he had no right to abuse his own pet, after which she directed her lightning attack straight at the beast's collar, and it shattered into small pieces. Chen, in turn, noted that Han's device had broken, and the snake would no longer serve him. Shin calmly walked up to her and stroked her head, asking if she wanted to join him. After meeting Lily, the guy could make contracts with demons, and the dragon instantly became ablaze with magic. Suddenly, the monster turned into a beautiful girl. The thugs were shocked by what was happening. The amethyst snake immediately said that from now on she would serve her new master. The extremely persistent new pet began to try in every way to win the favor of the main character, which naturally didn't please Lily, who ordered her not to interfere with him, but the snake urged her not to interfere. At that moment, law enforcement officers came to their aid and arrested Zhao. The captain reported that he now faces approximately 10 years in prison for the illegal use of crystal beasts, after which she also thanked the young master because it was he who helped to detain the criminal. By the time the amethyst snake had reverted to her animal form, the policewoman suddenly recognized her. It is said that this dragon was sold on the black market, and Chen will have to certify the beast. Then they finally left the room, taking the criminals and Han with them. Luna asked her brother if he had a new girlfriend. They soon headed home, where Shin began to realize that being a certified crystallizer was profitable. But the written test turned out to be quite difficult, and suddenly Lily reported that she had eaten but was not full. The dumbfounded guy replied that he had no more food. while the girl stated that her body was growing and she needed to eat more. Chen began to wonder what form it might evolve into. The teenager also realized that he needed to pass an exam to become a full-fledged crystallizer. Suddenly, the amethyst snake disturbed him and said that she also wanted to have a normal name. Shin thought Snake was a good name, but at the last moment he had the idea to call her Fitz. Soon the young man called a police officer and agreed to take a crystallizer test. The girl said that she would immediately send him a copy of the exam questions so that he could remember them. After a certain amount of time, the written part of the test ended, and Chen moved on to practice. At the same time, the guy believed that at the moment it was better not to show everyone Fitz's human form. A moment later, the amethyst snake was suddenly attacked by a magical bird. The teenager urged his pet to prepare for battle, and the demoness immediately assumed a fighting pose. But at the very last moment, the girl asked them not to attack the bird, after which she grabbed it and declared that she had just received the firebird and simply had not kept an eye on it. She added that her pet is simply extremely disobedient, and that is why she often finds herself in such situations. Then they met, and the stranger said her name was Sibling, and Chen reciprocated. After wishing each other good luck, they went to prepare for the upcoming exam. Those around her began to note the rarity of this bird, but Zhang categorically forbade it from attacking other monsters without permission. Soon the final test finally began, where it was necessary to defeat the opponent, which turned out to be the wind bird. It was considered extremely dangerous, and everyone understood this. Believing that she would be able to deal with the violet snake without any difficulty since she was of a lower rank, but Shin believed in Fitz and ordered her to unleash her poison on the enemy. However, the bird was clever enough to avoid all the toxic clouds. The audience was delighted with the performance, saying that the snake did not have long to live. At one point, Fitz pretended to be afraid of such a strong opponent. The bird, in turn, took advantage of the chance and rushed straight towards the snake. Having come as close as possible to the target, Chen's pet immediately spat out another portion of poison at it, after which she grabbed her body and began to squeeze, thus trapping the eagle. Then the amethyst snake began to pierce her with its sharpest fangs. The audience, in turn, was shocked by such an unexpected turn of events. Shin himself began to brag, saying that in fact, being a crystallizer is not that difficult. Suddenly, he found the next participant in the arena, which was Jingling with her ice phoenix. An incredible aura surrounded the magical bird, and it began to spew out ice crystals. They instantly struck the brown-spotted leopard down. It seemed like he had no chance. After some time, the earth beast actually fell, and everyone thought that the victory went to Zhang. However, when she began to celebrate, the leopard was inflamed with some kind of magic, after which he pounced on the girl, and the unsuspecting Lin continued to rejoice in her victory. The crystal beast, in turn, was a couple of centimeters away from its victim. But at that moment, Lily, for some unknown reason, intervened in the fight and fought back. Shocked, Chen couldn't understand why she did this, since now his participation was in question. At the same time, the leader of the crystal beast noted that the beast was extremely strong, but the leopard, having waited for the right moment, once again rushed towards Shinling. The main character urged the girl to get out of there, asking why she froze and did nothing. But everything happened too quickly, and Zhang simply didn't have time to react. The young master instantly ran up to her and knocked her to the ground, thereby saving her life. Lily pushed him aside again, claiming that she needed help as she couldn't handle him alone. The young cultivator said that in that case they would have to fight together. The amethyst snake also came to the rescue, but the leopard was incredibly strong. Shinling understood that she also had to help them because they were originally her opponent. Fitz immediately threw a huge amount of poison at him. The toxic cloud instantly began to corrode the beast's body, which was quite painful, and even the crushing magical aura couldn't help him avoid the damage. As a result, the animal began to make a wild roar. Everyone was shocked by what was happening. Taking advantage of the leopard's state, Shin urged his pet to attack him immediately. Lily instantly pierced the maddened beast with a fiery spear and killed it. The animal subsequently fell to the ground unconscious, and Chen noted that they had to sweat a lot. At this moment, Zhang's assistants ran up to her, saying that they couldn't come earlier. Adding that such powerful crystal beasts should not have been here, He immediately rushed to the young talent and praised him for his courage, calling herself the organizer of this exam. She also noticed the leader of the monsters and asked to examine her. The guy didn't mind, and after a certain amount of time, they conducted research. Shocked, Yang noted that this was the first time she had seen a demon in human form. After all, there simply weren't any like them in the world, and even her nine-tailed fox had only reached the humanoid stage. At that moment, she showed off her pet, which looked very much like a human. The fox immediately ran up to the teenager and began to sniff him. Kay said that she liked him. Suddenly, Fitz burst into flames of magic, and a worried Shin asked what was going on. He He soon realized that she had actually evolved in ways he had never expected. At the same time, the amethyst snake received even greater favor with its owner, as well as new abilities. Jan walked up to her and said that it was amazing, and that she was most likely accumulating experience points. Crystalline creatures also had the ability to go through several stages of development. An indignant Lily asked why she hadn't moved on to the next level, since she had no less defeated enemies behind her. Key explained this by saying that she was a special type of monster, and Yang gave the guy a capsule for storing pets. The teenager thanked her, noting that these devices are now very expensive. He then decided to test it out and aimed the capsule at Fitz, who instantly moved into it. But the leader of the demons said that she did not want to sit in the capsule. Suddenly, Kay congratulated Chen on officially receiving the title of Certified Crystallizer. She also asked him to bring her more animals for research. Thus, Shin became a full member of the association and will receive monthly profits. As he was leaving the building, the young man saw Lin, who said that she had not had time to thank him for saving her. Moreover, she disgraced herself today. But the family always says that goodness must be paid for. The teenager, in turn, was confused and said that he didn't need anything from her, and suggested that they just be friends. However, Jiang took it a little differently and instantly blushed with embarrassment. Having declared that she needed to think about it, the young lady immediately rushed off in an unknown direction. That night, Chen couldn't sleep, trying to figure out who Yang really was and why the leopard was so furious. At that moment, Fitz suddenly appeared in human form and said that she also wanted to sleep next to her master. A couple of minutes later, the main character was in the arms of two incredible beauties. Suddenly, someone called Lily to wake up to send her on a journey and become a real queen. It seemed as if she was dreaming. The voice asked her to find the 12 knights and gain the 7 virtues. The next morning, the leader of the Crystal Beast told Shin about this. The young master thought about it because he also heard a voice that urged him to help Lily become queen. Lily, in turn, continued to eat all the food in the house with complete calm. Soon they went to the Crystallizer Center where they could earn points and pay for certain purchases with them. The young cultivator asked the headquarters staff member what tasks were available to him. After finding one of the high-paying missions, Chen became curious about why it was so special. The girl said that this was a task from Kei, but everyone prefers to take easier missions. Sinyu found this rather strange and he decided to agree to do it anyway. He stated that he had been lucky lately and perhaps fortune would smile upon him again. The task said that it was necessary to get to a huge, dense forest. Along the way, Lily defeated many beasts, but she never felt the approach of a breakthrough to the next level. Suddenly, she saw another little animal and immediately headed towards it, dreaming of the next stage. It was the demonic crystal two-tailed fox, which was a real surprise, because it was he who needed to be caught according to the assignment, which was what Chen's pet reported. Shin tried to get closer to him, but he ran away and they chased after him. After running several hundred meters, the teenager discovered that Lily and the fox were missing. At that moment, he heard some sounds ahead and decided to check what was going on there. Peeking out from behind a tree, Chen saw an unknown man placing the fox in a box, saying he would sell it. Suddenly, the capsule in Shin's hands began to shake, and the young man assumed that Fitz had also been sold on the black market. The stranger, in turn, noticed the newly made crystallizer and called for help from a poisonous spider. The youth instantly released the amethyst snake and asked if he was from the Dark Regiment faction. Ignoring him, the unknown man asked him in return what kind of animal it was, after which he ordered the spider to use the web, and the insect immediately began to release its webs. Fitz tried to avoid his web and rushed to the side. It all happened pretty quickly, but in the end the monster's nets caught up with her, and she found herself immobilized. The representative of the Dark Regiment said that now no one would help him, because the poisonous spider is one of the strongest crystal demons. Chen in turn called on the violet snake to use his new skill, after which the insect seemed to be paralyzed, which its owner did not expect. However, even after this, the stranger refused to give up and stated that he would not stop him. Shin hurried to free his pet, and soon she helped her owner defeat the poacher. A couple of minutes later, Chen tied him to a tree and decided to look at what was in his pockets, where he found an expensive beast crystal and a potion of unknown origin, which was quite curious. Thus, the mission was successfully completed, and all that remained was to take the fox to the association. A moment later, Lily finally appeared and called out to her owner. The bloody girl called on Shin to run away immediately, and another monster appeared behind her with a stranger. Who was the head of the Dark Regiment with her 6-winged queen bee? The leader of the Crystal Beast informed the protagonist that this demon was extremely dangerous. The bee instantly pointed its sting towards Shin, the fiery sharp needles heading towards Chen and Lily with Fitz. Several of them hit the amethyst snake's body, and the young master was terrified. after which the bee turned its huge sting towards the young cultivator. However, Chen managed to avoid this attack at the last moment, which was extremely difficult. At the same time, he noted that there was no point in fighting with the same crystallizer, but she had a different opinion, in connection with which she once again ordered her queen bee to attack him and his pet, but her bee suddenly collapsed to the ground, dissolving in toxic acid, which the amethyst snake managed to release on her, which was extremely timely. Soon the young man hurried to place her back into the capsule, thanking her for her help. However, after a few seconds, the bee came back to life and burst into a burst of energy. But while this act of resurrecting the monster was taking place, Shin and Lily escaped. Chen stated that Fitz could not continue the battle, and they needed to figure out a way to defeat the night-level bee. Suddenly, the leader of the magical demons leaned against the teenager. Lily noticed that he smelled like that woman, and most likely she marked him so that she could track him in the future. After which the young man suddenly opened the box and released the two-tailed fox. The bewildered pet asked why he did this. Shin replied that they couldn't put the mission's objective in danger, especially since they were facing a serious battle. Chen also hastened to please her by showing her energy crystals that increased experience points. Meanwhile, the head of the Dark Regiment and the queen bee continued to search for their victim. The guy was trying to figure out if Lily had enough experience to evolve. However, after a couple of seconds, fiery needles pierced their bodies. They did not have time to react. Thus, literally chaining them to the trees, it seemed there was no escape for them. The girl who suddenly appeared smiled and said that this time the hide-and-seek was over. An enraged Lily ordered her to let Chen go, agreeing to go with her. However, the stubborn stranger said that she would deal with him first because he would clearly want to take revenge on her. The girl was shocked by her unexpected decision and began to think about what to do. And just a couple of minutes later, she sparkled with unknown magic, which was a breakthrough to the next level. Transforming into a huge dragon, Lily ordered her to immediately let the guy go. A stunned Chen, in turn, realized that she had managed to evolve after all. Thus, his pet entered the night stage, which radically changed the situation. But the head of the criminal organization said that if she did not surrender, her master would die. Lily this time summoned her flame dragon and rushed towards the stranger. The queen bee's owner did not expect her rival to possess such impressive strength. This was what the wounded Chen took advantage of, having managed to free himself from the stinging needles. The bee once again aimed its sting at Lily and her huge dragon. However, the warrior passed the sharp needles and continued on the path of the self-confident girl, who was thinking about running away because the forces were really incomparable. She soon managed to release a fireball at Queen Bee and literally burn her. But the head of the Dark Regiment noted that she had more than one bee at her disposal. But she didn't have time to call her insects for help, because two-tailed foxes suddenly appeared. The extremely surprised representative of the criminal group could not understand why the bees did not appear, and only then did she discover the magical foxes that blocked her path. However, even with this, the mistress of the demonic bees was in no hurry to give up. Having released a poisonous cloud, she disappeared in an unknown direction, saying that this was not their last meeting. The main character was perplexed because she simply ran away, although she behaved quite impudently, adding that it was the first time he had seen such an arrogant crystallizer. At this moment, the leader of the two-tailed foxes began to bark sharply towards Chen. Lily stated that he was grateful to the young master for saving his cub, and invited them to visit. The young cultivator decided to go to his lair, realizing that they would not have another chance. After passing through the magical gate, they entered the territory of the demon foxes. Where the view was unimaginable, Shin and Lily were impressed by the beast's camp. However, this place was not on the association map, and no one knew about the existence of this location. But at a certain point, several monsters began to show their fangs and bark loudly. Chen realized that not all the foxes were happy to see them, and that he should remain quiet so as not to provoke them. A moment later, their leader growled loudly and the rest of the minions fell silent. Also, absolutely everyone bowed before their leader, who slowly walked towards the people. Seeing the gate of the beast's ancestors, the pet urged the owner not to go there, so that they would not be cursed. But at that very moment, the crystal seemed to call Lily to follow it, and her body soared into the air. Then she began to approach him, and a puzzled Shin asked what she was doing. After all, she herself said that under no circumstances should one approach the ancestors of foxes. Finally arriving in front of the crystal, the nine-tailed fox appeared in front of her. She immediately noticed that she had not met the descendants of the red dragons for a long time. Lily, extremely surprised, asked her how she knew her. Chen also ran up to them. The fox introduced herself as Amaterasu and said that she was the ancestor of the nine-tailed foxes, adding that in fact, several thousand years ago, the world was ruled by a representative of the red dragons. She also said that the dragon minion only had a drop of red snake in her, and at the moment she is extremely weak. Shin was indignant, saying that he would definitely help her become stronger. At the same time, he spoke about a recent prophecy in which his pet could allegedly become a queen. Amaterasu noted that there were rumors that the dragon leader would return in the near future, but she didn't believe it, and suddenly she gave Lily a blade of extraordinary beauty. It could use water attacks and was also at the senior level. The stunned leader of the Crystal Beasts asked if she was really giving her this sword. Tarasu stated that this was her contribution to the future princess. And besides, the weapon was faulty, meaning that there were 10 blades in total with different characteristics and they had to find them all. After which Amma suddenly disappeared, but one thing was clear: the blades would help Lily become stronger. At this time, Sinya's pet began to arm herself with a new sword and test it in action. Suddenly, a huge dragon with a water element appeared behind her, and the girl backed away. Then Lily suddenly found herself caught in a magical sphere and was pulled underwater towards the monster. Shocked, Chen tried to help her but had no idea how to do it. In the end, the main character still reached the Red Dragon's minion. At the same time, the young master stated that she was a descendant of such high-ranking monsters and should take advantage of this. The young cultivator's pet listened to her master's motivational speech and said that she understood him, after which she rushed towards the water dragon, aiming her new blade, calling upon the sword to lend her its crushing power of a rushing stream. The water in the magical sphere instantly turned into a kind of whirlwind, and the monster roared loudly. He also said that the girl must demonstrate her incredible power. A moment later, unimaginable magic began to spill out of the weapon, after which the dragon immediately retreated and literally evaporated into thin air. Amaterasu didn't expect the Red Dragon's minion to harness the sword so quickly. Chen acted as her mentor and could even stimulate the power of the monster's blood. Seeing what happened, absolutely all the two-tailed foxes and even their leader bowed before Lily. The girl didn't expect that she would make such an impression on everyone, which Shin stated. Soon the leader of the pack recognized her as an ancestor and invited her to the Night of Evolution as an honored guest. Suddenly several foxes brought her a couple of baskets with various treats, after which they suddenly began to bark at the moon, which was like some kind of magic. Lily noted that in this way they absorbed the energy of the moonlight. Suddenly, one of the foxes broke through to the next stage of development and turned into three-tailed. Chen was extremely surprised by this process and found it quite fascinating. At a certain point, the fox headed towards Shin and his pet said that she wanted to go with him. But at that moment, the five-tailed fox ran up to her and urged her to retreat. Since she was too young to go on a journey with a man, the boy petted her. Then he said that as soon as she grows up, he will definitely invite her to his team. Suddenly, Amaterasu ran up to them and said that she had forgotten one important thing, after which she gave Chen a fragment of the Death Stone, because it is with it that the Fox clan recognizes him as their partner. The young man thanked her, and Terasu finally went to rest a little. This whole fascinating journey turned out to be quite productive. Shin suddenly wondered what Amma would look like if she signed a contract with him and acquired a human form. Meanwhile, Kei was busy with her research in the laboratory as always, where Chen soon came and told her about the failed mission because he was still unable to catch the two-tailed fox. But a disheveled Yang said that it didn't matter and that she needed information about Amaterasu. She also asked him to show her the Deadly Stone, and the young man immediately gave her the fragment. Lily in turn began to ask her pet Qi about the Knight of the Crystal World and the Miracle Sword. Hearing this, Yang immediately said that she had some information about this blade. He stated that one day, the crystallizers began to disappear under strange circumstances. One of them soon reappeared, but he remembered nothing, only saying something about some sword. The teenager assumed that this was the weapon that Amaterasu had told them about. Suddenly, the amethyst snake appeared in front of the main character and called out to its master, asking him to also teach new techniques and provide resources for self-improvement, adding that he doesn't want to lag behind Lily, who is not only advanced in development, but also received new weapons. Meanwhile, the leader of the Crystal Beast tried to control her power. However, she was not very successful in doing this, and as a result, a stream of water rushed over her. The pet noted that water is much more difficult to control than fire, and the guy praised her. At the same time, the young master thought about the disappearance of the crystallizer during the battle. What was strange enough was that Yinling suddenly appeared in the forest and discovered the teenager. Trying to calm herself, she said that this was a normal meeting, and she shouldn't be so nervous. Suddenly, the young cultivator noticed her and asked in surprise what she was doing here. He stated that he was just looking for an opponent to fight with, and then asked if she was busy. Emboldened, Zhang agreed, noting that her ice phoenix had recently evolved and she was curious to know its strength. Soon this person released a huge bird which sparkled with blue light. The dumbfounded Chen instantly felt a chill. Realizing that the phoenix was at the night stage of cultivation, Shin immediately urged Lily not to be afraid of him and to act decisively, since they had already dealt with similar monsters. However, just as the red dragon minion rushed to attack, Lin used a special skill. Thus, the girl instantly fell into an ice sphere and could not get out of it. Chen guessed that Zhang was deliberately pretending to be weak, but even so, Lily was unstoppable. The pet immediately began to melt the ice with fire magic, her eyes instantly glowing. A few seconds later, she released a huge wave of flame and destroyed the ice structure. Xinling ordered Phoenix to continue attacking, noting that Xin had grown stronger since their last meeting. The teenager reciprocated as the Zhang bird actually leveled up. Thus, two opposing elements of fire and ice clashed with each other. At this moment, an inexplicable glow appeared behind the fighting demons. It looked like some kind of portal. Chen understood that this was what Kay was talking about. Suddenly, he asked his pet what she felt. Lily responded as if someone was calling her to come inside. Without thinking twice, Xin and the leader of the crystal beast went into the portal. As soon as they went to the otherworldly dimension, the magical gates closed. A perplexed Xinling couldn't understand what had happened and where they had gone. Chen and Lily, in turn, began to look around, where there was boiling magma and rocks everywhere. The pet, however, was inclined to believe that everything was not just like that and that this place was literally calling them here. Suddenly, a green light flew out of the lava and led them in an unknown direction. Xin called on the red dragon minion to follow him to see where he would lead them. Soon they found themselves in front of a large green gate, where it was written that this was the entrance to the abyss of eternal hatred. What his maid told the teenager, the surprised young man asked how she was able to read this incomprehensible language. Finally, the gate opened and they went inside, where they had to move along small stones in the magma, from which fire lizards suddenly began to crawl out. Chen and Lily immediately retreated back. One of them instantly opened its mouth and shot a ball of fire in their direction. The brave leader of the crystal beasts immediately fought them back with the help of new water magic. A huge dragon also came to her aid and began to destroy the monsters. From now on, Lily had the ability to summon him with her blade, but soon it all ended. The dumbfounded protagonist stated that this was her first time fighting with the Sword of the Torrent, and that she had already reached an incredible level. But the pet became too carried away by this process, especially feeling her superiority. She didn't even pay attention to the ghost that suddenly appeared and called on her to kill. The leading dragon at this time was feeding on the souls of its dead brethren. In addition, thanks to the power of the sacred Sword of Wrath, which awakened his fighting instincts, he received even more energy. But suddenly he felt the approach of the power of another magical blade. Naturally, he was not going to give up his weapon and began to prepare for the inevitable battle. Remembering the terrible events when people caused him terrible pain, so he wanted to take revenge. The owner of the Queen Bee, due to certain circumstances, was also in this location, where she hurried to sort things out with some people. One of them unexpectedly called her an old woman. The spirit that suddenly appeared also began to call her an extremely unattractive person, adding that even if he had gotten her, he would never have coveted her in his life. The girl demanded that he immediately shut up and killed the last crystallizer. Having said that she was not even 30 and was not old, the ghost continued to press on her weak spots. Assuring that everyone who came to see her on a date did not want to continue because they did not like her, the young master, meanwhile, could not keep up with his pet and asked her not to hurry. Suddenly, he heard a very familiar voice and turned around, seeing the queen bee in front of him. The girl, in turn, asked the young cultivator whether he considered himself a man. The guy was surprised by such a strange question, realizing that Fitz would not be able to cope with her. Then the owner of the queen bee asked again if she was not an attractive woman. She fell to the ground and declared that she had never had a relationship and that no one needed her. Naturally, Chen began to play along with her and told her that she was damn attractive. Suddenly, they held hands, and at that moment, a stunned Lily ran up to them. The extremely indignant minion of the Red Dragons reminded the master that he was facing an enemy. The queen bee asked her curiously if she was really in love with this man. The girl was confused as she simply did not expect to hear such a question, and then began to make excuses. Saying that it was not so, the young cultivator responded by urging her to calm down immediately. Suddenly, a huge saw flew towards them, but the head of the Dark Regiment managed to dodge the attack. The leader of the Crystal Beasts in blue were also able to dodge. A moment later, Razor, who was a member of the Dark Organization, appeared in front of them. The main character noted that it was he who was preventing her from finding a worthy partner. Zor noted that the Bee Queen would never betray the Dark Regiment and his provocation was useless. After all, they have a fairly high salary. After which Ray directed his praying mantis towards Lily and Chen. The Red Dragon's minion immediately began to protect the young master. At the same time, the young cultivator understood perfectly well that the enemy's strength was many times greater than that of his pet. However, Jin continued to insist that the princess would not buy true love with money, and it was time for her to think about it. Lily, in turn, fought bravely with a fairly strong praying mantis. At a certain moment, the monster dealt her a crushing blow and the girl flew back. The teenager's fear was visible to those around him, and they understood what he was going through. Fear haunted absolutely every living creature in this area. The demonic insect instantly rushed towards the leader of the crystal beasts. Trying to kill her, Lily didn't know what to do in this situation and just waited for her fate. But at the very last moment, Chen released the amethyst snake, which began to restrain the monster. Meanwhile, the voices of unknown ghosts began to pester Shin, claiming that he was finished. A puzzled Razor asked Queen Bee why she was just standing there and watching. Then Chen said again that money couldn't buy youth and she needed to make an important decision. Mantis in turn turned to the Violet Serpent, trying to finish her off. Zor began to persuade the bee princess not to fall for the guy's trick, since any man can be bought for money. Shin assured her otherwise. Suddenly, Ray ordered his beast to deal with this boy. The huge demon immediately rushed towards the teenager. Everything happened quite quickly. But at this moment, the owner of the queen bee finally made her choice. As a result of her attacking the mantis, Razor was shocked by such an unexpected turn of events. The queen of bees herself asked the young man if he would become her man forever. Chen played along with her and answered positively. Naturally, the amethyst snake and the red dragon minion were outraged by his answer. Ray declared that today he would put things in order in the head of an extremely stupid woman. The queen bee in turn ordered her pet to attack the mantis and its master. Thus, the head of the Dark Regiment rebelled against her servant. Chen immediately ran up to Lily and asked if she was okay, and the girl answered positively. At the same time, Razor was superior to the princess in strength, and Shin called on his pet to help her. However, her special attack required time to concentrate the ability. Meanwhile, the queen bee fell from the sharp blades of the praying mantis. Everyone was horrified. Chen, in turn, said with extreme confidence that the battle was not over. Lily immediately began to summon the water dragon and was about to deliver a fatal blow. At the same time, she used the power of the stormy stream sword and rushed towards the huge insect. But at the same time, the leader of the crystal beasts attacked the queen bee and her owner. The stunned queen bee could not understand why Shin and his pet attacked her. The guy noted that Lily had indeed put her in danger, realizing that she had done it on purpose. Fitz, as well as the red dragon's minion, began to convince the master that she was an enemy and was not needed by him. Chen suggested that the girls heard the voices of unknown ghosts and that was why they began to behave strangely. The spirits also began to urge the teenager to give in to passion and reciprocate the girl's feelings, after which he simply had to leave the area. But the stubborn protagonist continued to calm his magical pets. However, a huge number of female ghosts tirelessly whispered a different scenario to them. Amethyst Snake said that the young master just needed to relax. Suddenly, one of the voices called on the young cultivator to save his queen. At that moment, the ruler of the otherworldly dimension approached them in the form of a huge dragon, who hastened to release a stream of flame at them, but did not achieve the desired result, because Lily had previously enveloped them in a protective barrier that would absorb any damage. Suddenly, the blade of the torrent passed into Sin's hands, and the youth realized that he could also control it. The evil ghost spoke tirelessly about only one thing, trying to make them listen to their words. Chen, in turn, began to wield the magic sword, realizing how magnificent it was. After all, this weapon in the hands of the true king acquired new power. Then Sin realized that he had to protect Lily. Suddenly, an unknown aura rushed towards the guy and his young pets. A moment later, a little sister appeared behind the boy and called out to him. Who asked why he didn't come to save her, and if it weren't for Lily, nothing would have happened. Shocked, Chen turned around abruptly and saw his sister's spirit in front of him, realizing that he shouldn't give in to these visions. However, this was extremely difficult to do, since the image of the little sister was too real. The maddened Shin waved his blade, and the same dragon appeared in his sister's place. The teenager immediately began to hit him, saying that it was he who tried to fool him with Fitz and Lily. Suddenly, the monster concentrated dark magic and released it towards the young man, which in turn managed to generate a magical barrier in time. At the same time, with each passing second, it became more and more difficult to contain the flow of the demon's power. The amethyst snake immediately rushed to the aid of its young master. She instantly struck with her powerful tail, but the dragon managed to dodge the attack. The leader of the crystal beast immediately came to the guy, asking if everything was okay with him. Suddenly, the monster said that the determination to protect a person is surprising for people like them. Chen urged his pets to remain calm during battle, as the monster could turn emotions into weapons. The girls immediately rushed to attack him, while Shin held back another stream of flame. The boy asked Fitz to use the poison mist to cover Lily, which is what she ultimately did, and the emboldened red dragon minion was then able to strike. However, at that moment, the monster sent a huge ball of light at her. Chen urged his pet to be careful, but the dragon's magical sphere gradually approached the frightened girl. Suddenly, the demon blade turned against him, declaring that he could not harm the future queen. At that moment, the protagonist threw the sword of the torrent to Lily so that she could finish what she started. As soon as the leader of the crystal beast took it in her hands, she unleashed a crushing force on the dragon. As a result, the demon fell hopelessly, turning into a small animal. Thus, the red dragon's minion obtained the sacred sword of wrath, but as soon as she tried to take the blade, for some unknown reason it began to move away from her. Then he said that at the moment he had one unfinished business, so the amethyst snake took the little fox in her hands and asked the owner what to do with him. But suddenly something seemed to burn her, and she released the beast from her hands. The dog instantly grew in size and declared that he must take revenge. Lily, extremely indignant, said that he had no right to disobey the queen's order. Meanwhile, the sword of the torrent pierced Fitz's body, thereby borrowing her body, after which she again took on an animal form, which was covered in a watery aura. The snake then immediately attacked the dog, declaring that he had betrayed his queen and therefore must die. But the beast also managed to bite through Fitz's body, replying that it was obliged to fulfill its promise. So they began to fight, the amethyst snake intending to defend the honor of the princess. Suddenly, everything around began to collapse. Chen said that due to the death of the master of this world, it inevitably began to fall apart. This meant that they needed to escape as quickly as possible, and so they began to separate Fitz from the dog. Moreover, they used other people's bodies to sort out their relationships. In the end, Shin stood in the middle and moved them apart. The blade of the torrent instantly left Fitz's body, and she fell unconscious to the ground. The teenager immediately ran up to her and tried to bring his pet back to consciousness. The sword inside the beast said that the queen had finally met a worthy man, adding that he is obliged to take revenge on the people who hurt his fellow humans, and they need to take revenge. He also asked Lily for permission to commit vendetta, as he had found the location of the enemy, after which he returned to her. The amethyst snake in turn asked the owner to look at her bitten tail. Chen ignored her and asked the blade if it was talking about the Dark Regiment. The dog replied that it was true and he had found their base. Then Shin decided to go with him. A stunned Lily and Fitz assumed that their owner had actually fallen in love with that woman, but the guy assured that he had to destroy this organization because they were the ones who sold the snake. Moreover, they had harmed many people. Amethyst Snake suddenly hugged Chen and began to thank him. However, the leader of the Crystal Beasts also decided to keep him company, so they all went together to the secret camp of the Dark Regiment. The next morning, Chen prepared breakfast for the dog and knocked on her door, but no one answered him, so Shin entered the room, declaring that he had prepared a snack for the sacred Sword of Wrath. But suddenly he saw in front of him a young lady with a dog's tail and was surprised. The puzzled protagonist asked who she was and what she was doing there. The girl replied that she herself did not understand how this happened after taming a wild dog. But at the same time, she began to behave like a dog, which was quite strange to observe. The young master urged her not to make such ridiculous movements, but the Holy Sword of Wrath thought differently. Stating that her new body is quite attractive and she even likes this image, the young cultivator told her not to overdo it and to behave decently. However, the restless predator suddenly threw the teenager to the floor. Chen was in shock, continuing to insist that she shouldn't be so persistent and that she should calm down. In response, the girl began to lick him, saying that dogs leave their scent on the one they like. But at the same time, she still couldn't stop and invited him to play a game. At this time, Fitz, Lily, and Xinling were calmly having breakfast at the table. But Zhang said that Xin had been gone for a long time. Naively believing that the guy was more disposed towards her than towards his pets, she went to look for him. Chen and the Holy Blade of Wrath, in turn, began cultivating. A moment later, the door to their room opened and a stunned Lin stood on the threshold. Suddenly, she screamed loudly and everyone immediately became alarmed because they did not expect to see her. Soon, everyone began to scold the actions of the sacred sword. Lily even ordered her not to do such things in this body anymore, after which they finally got down to business and asked if Razor and Queen Bee had arrived at headquarters. Xinling urged everyone not to go to the Dark Regiment camp, assuring that it was an extremely dangerous place. Xin, in turn, said that they must act carefully so as not to fall into a trap. Moreover, they do not know the true power of this organization, where they soon headed. Meanwhile, Zor and Queen Bee found themselves tied up in front of their patron. The girl begged to be given another chance to take revenge on the man and his pets. The leader of the Dark Regiment stated that she would not execute them for their mistakes because she still needed them, adding that they must take their work seriously as they had lost the Sword of Wrath due to their negligence. Suddenly, the warrior swung her magic blade, and Razor and his partner were terribly frightened. While continuing to beg not to kill them, a dark aura suddenly appeared behind them, who began to strangle them. The clan lord also noticed that they were actually being followed. A few seconds later, only the lifeless bodies of her servants remained on the chairs. The ruler herself stated that she was even curious about who would dare to enter her lair. Chen and his team of pets managed to defeat several guards and change into their clothes, naively believing that their identities would not be revealed. Lily had a bad feeling that they had gotten inside so easily. Shin also found this extremely suspicious. Sacred Sword quickly posted a couple of observers for the escape routes. In fact, the mistress had been watching over them all this time, knowing what to expect. At the same time, she ordered her servant to take the key from them, but not to touch the blade, because she wanted to test its power. Manticore, in turn, immediately began to carry out the instructions of the leadership. Using his magical techniques, that's something that Shin and his team never expected. Soon, the main character penetrated the secret territory of the base, where crystal beasts were kept behind bars. Lily immediately ran up to them, declaring that she would definitely let them out, but Jin urged her to be quiet. The young master also suggested that the sacred blade keep track of where the beasts were being taken. At that moment, the Manticore, with lightning speed, pounced on the red dragon minion, and just a couple of seconds later she found herself in a place completely unknown to her, and immediately began to look around. Not understanding where it was or what had happened, it was actually an artificial sanctuary of Avalon. The Dark Regiment's ruler also suddenly appeared before the young cultivator and the others. Amethyst Snake said that they needed to fight back and find Lily as soon as possible. However, the extremely self-confident warrior said that now they would not leave here, thanking them for even deciding to return the sacred Sword of Wrath to her. Seeing another magical blade in her hands, they understood how she had tracked them down, after which Fitz and the Sword of Wrath rushed to attack, leaving the rear to Xingling and Chen. The teenager began to look around but did not see any of his enemies. But a moment later, a black spider of incredible size appeared in front of them. The ruler of the Dark Regiment, in turn, said that she had long been curious to see the power of the blade. Black Dog instantly used the weapon's special techniques. Demonstrating the full power of the flame, however, the leader of the Dark Regiment easily rebuffed it. Using the power of the Dark Sword, the girl declared that it was she who caused so much suffering to her tribe. Zhang, in turn, noted that this spider acts on its own without waiting for orders from its owner. Shin summoned Violet Snake to attack the moment the monster opened up. However, the huge demonic spider, despite its size, moved quite quickly. As a result, he was able to neutralize Jiang and Fitz. Turning around, Jin saw that the Sword of Wrath in the dog's body had also been defeated. Chen knew that she was truly the strongest opponent he had ever met. The spider was pleased with the work done, anticipating the taste of her victory. At this time, the wounded Lily continued to wander around the unfamiliar area, realizing that in such a state she could not return. Suddenly, the sword stuck into the stone spoke to the red dragon's minion. Incomprehensible voices began to pester her. The girl could not understand what was happening at all. Suddenly, the blade sensed the power of the other three weapons and opened its gates for them. The Dark Regiment's mistress, in turn, was extremely surprised that the young master could also wield the sacred sword. The main character stated that he had already had the opportunity to control a similar blade. The ruler immediately attacked the young cultivator, calling on him to demonstrate his skills. Chen had great difficulty blocking the spider's devastating attacks. Suddenly, a flame burst out behind them, and a second later, Shin found himself in an unknown place. Looking around, the teenager could not understand what had happened and where he was. At that moment, his wound suddenly healed, and at that moment, Lily ran up to him. But along with him, the head of the Dark Regiment was also transported to this dimension, having found another sacred sword. The weapon in turn asked which of them was the child of the true king. The spider silently reached out to him, and the blade, to his surprise, saw in her its new mistress, saying that she is indeed the most suitable option for his possession, adding that its previous owner had no less a broad soul and strength. However, when he saw Lily, he said that she smelled quite familiar. The leader of the Crystal Beast said that she is a descendant of the Golden Dragon, but the sword replied that it had already chosen its mistress and it no longer mattered. The joyful ruler of the criminal organization noted that the blade did not see her as a queen. The sacred weapon also stated that it does not like young girls as much as mature women. Chen was outraged by his choice, saying that such a legendary sword could not determine its owner by appearance alone. The bewildered blade instantly flared up even more and said that there should be no men here. At the same time, he considered himself the best sword among the others, which itself chooses its owner. Then Shin decided to go the other way and take him by quantity, since they couldn't match him in individuality. Suddenly, he called out to the sacred blade and released his pets from the capsule, having stated that if he chose Lily, all these girls would obey him. The dumbfounded sword thought about it, understanding perfectly well that this option really suits him better. After all, in that case, he will have a harem of the most beautiful women, and not just one aging one. The shocked spider asked if he really wanted to choose her just because of her body. Blade immediately responded that she was no longer in his area of interest. Then the enraged ruler of the Dark Regiment decided to destroy him and directed an attack at him. Naturally, the Holy Sword reacted insolently and stated that she had no right to treat him like that. Then, with just one movement, he knocked the Dark Blade out of her hands. Everything happened too fast. In doing so, he cut off a small part of her clothing, which immediately fell to the ground. Naturally, she was extremely unhappy about this, not hiding her indignation. But the sacred blade went completely berserk, ordering her to get out of here immediately. Because in his opinion, she was not worthy of using such a majestic power. Of course, the warrior did not agree with his verdict, and he had to drive her away by force. As a result, the ruler of the Dark Regiment literally flew into the portal, which instantly closed. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief that she had finally rid them of her presence. The sword also recognized Lily as its new owner, and happily reached out to the girl. As soon as the Red Dragon's minion took it in her hands, she immediately felt incredible power, which seemed to pierce her body, filling it with magical waves of flame and lightning. After which an explosion occurred. Chen was shocked by what happened. The leader of the Crystal Beast herself did not have time to understand what had happened. The blade noticed that its new young owner had too low a level, but suddenly the sword turned into a charming girl, which no one expected. Everyone began to ask her the appropriate questions. The weapon replied that it was a special blade, adding that she was the strongest sword and her name was Avalon. She then asked to take her to the rest of the sisters. Shin began to understand that Lily urgently needed to break through to the next stage. Lan also stated that she needed to strengthen herself in order to be able to experience her power. Meanwhile, the crippled ruler of the Dark Regiment returned to her camp, where she began to vent her furious anger on everything that came to hand. At that moment, a worried manticore ran up to her and reported that the base had been captured by unknown people in black, adding that they had already captured absolutely all of her servants. Thus, they had only one way out: to immediately take flight to save themselves. But the Spider-Woman stated that the affairs of their organization were connected with extremely influential people, and after their failure and the fall of the guild, their existence is a threat to them. Suddenly, a strong black mist began to emerge from the warrior's sword, from which an unknown girl appeared and hugged her. Having said that she would protect her, in fact, at the moment the unknown people arrived, Jinling managed to turn on the tracker. Soon after, people from her family found them, and as a result, they were all saved. Who were sent by Zhang's brother named Kai, who had previously collaborated with the Dark Regiment, but after a certain point, their cooperation came to naught. And so his bodyguards put the squeeze on this organization. His assistants soon informed him of this, but the guy had a few questions. One of them tormented him more than the others, as his older sister ended up in the lair of this organization. His servant stated that an unknown person brought her to the spider's camp. Rubbing his glasses busily, Kai ordered him to look into this matter immediately, and also to eliminate everyone who gets in their way. The bodyguard immediately went to carry out Zhang's instructions. Soon the main character and his harem went home, which his sister was not very happy about. Luna called on the young master to explain what all these girls were doing in their house. The young cultivator replied that they were his pets, and the new girl was extremely important to Lily. However, the restless Avalon caused a lot of trouble and behaved disgustingly. Chen, in turn, constantly put her in her place, telling her that she should behave within the limits of what was permitted. But it seemed that everything was useless as Lan once again began to pester the sacred Sword of Wrath. At the same time, she called her a knight, which led Shin and Lily to think about the 12 guardians that were mentioned in the prophecy. Ava, extremely surprised, asked if they had never heard of the legend of the 12 knights, adding that this was directly related to the magical blades for which the crystal beasts were chosen as vessels. But they all have only one task: to protect the true Dragon Queen from ill-wishers. And that is why the 12 monsters are endowed with the superpowers of divine swords. As such, they are responsible for the safety of the Crystal Beast Princess. Chen was interested in how the spider was able to wield the sacred sword. Lily tried to understand whether she was also one of the vessels for the magical blade. The next day, Shin went to the association center and asked to arrange a simulation battle for him to raise the beast's level. One thought haunted him. The 12 knights used the power of only one sword, but Lily could wield all the blades. But the most amazing thing is that even people could use them, which even Avalon did not know. After a certain amount of time, Chen and the Amethyst Snake went out to fight against the Dark Dog. Fitz needed to become stronger in order to use the Sword of the Torrent, which in turn recognized her, so the snake rushed into battle, dreaming of becoming the full owner of the blade. All this time, Kai's servant was watching what was happening, and he decided to stop Shin. By activating his device, he thereby increased the strength of the training dog. Meanwhile, the Amethyst Snake began to strangle its victim with its powerful tail, but a moment later the animal turned into a real monster and broke free from Fitz's embrace. A dumbfounded Chen couldn't understand what was happening and why the dog had grown in size. At the same time, he gained incredible strength, and his pet Sinya also did not understand what had happened. The maddened dark dog struck her with a lightning-fast movement and soared into the air. The bewildered teenager immediately rushed to her aid to see if she was okay, but the enraged demon once again rushed to attack. Chen immediately generated a magical barrier, which Dark Dog tried to break, but he failed. After a couple of minutes, the monster finally destroyed the shield, but by that time Shin had obtained the Sword of the Stormy Stream. Kai's assistant, in turn, believed that whoever destroyed the Dark Regiment must have had much greater power. The wounded Fitz again began to defend her master, but the boy called her back, stating that he would personally deal with it, and that she would soon have to break through to the next level. The incredible power of the magical blade instantly enveloped the body of its new owner. Thus, the main character had the opportunity to carry out devastating attacks, which the young master aimed at the furious beast, causing it to collapse to the ground. But at the same time, he split into a pair of no less powerful dogs, which completely shocked Chen. Kai's servant reported that the young cultivator had skillfully concealed his power, but that would not help him. Shin asked his weapon if it could create a dimension like the Holy Blade of Wrath. Sword replied that this required the help of a crystal beast of night level. Suddenly, Fitz took the weapon from the owner and declared that she would personally deal with this scum. Chen remembered what Avalon had told him to evolve the crystal monster, where only rare species could move on to the next stage of development, but on the condition that their owner would be on the verge of death. The teenager then decided to put himself in danger so that the Amethyst Snake could evolve. In this regard, he urged her to prepare to release the poisonous mist and use her weapon. At one point, Fitz released her toxic cloud, which spread throughout the arena. However, the young man himself was immune to her poison, and as a result, it did not pose a threat to him. But as it turned out, the Dark Dogs were also not affected by the acidic liquid. So they once again rushed into the attack. The Amethyst Snake again splashed out a portion of poison. Chen's pet understood that there was no time left and she needed to break through. After all, if she doesn't become stronger, her master will be in danger, which she will never be able to forgive herself for. At the moment when the dogs began to attack them again, the teenager immediately pushed the girl away from him, having thus exposed herself to attack. The stunned Amethyst Snake did not know what to do. After a few seconds, Fitz began to emit a huge stream of incredible energy from herself. This is what Shin, who could only observe the process taking place, was trying to achieve. The pet, in turn, appeared before everyone in a slightly different image, at the level of a knight, after which she struck the dogs with her new and extremely painful abilities. But even after so many furious attacks, they continued to resist her. The girl continued to deliver a series of crushing blows with her sword. Summoning dozens of water snakes, Fitz once again unleashed magical attacks on the dogs. And this time they were successful, eliminating the furious dark dogs one by one. The Amethyst Snake felt an unimaginable surge of power, which allowed her to be extremely unpredictable. However, at that moment, her legs suddenly weakened and she fell to the ground. Chen was surprised. Meanwhile, law enforcement officers arrived to help, trying to catch all the crystal beasts. After all, they simply got out of control of the training process. But when the police captain entered the arena, all the animals were defeated. At the same moment, a worried Kay appeared and stated that nothing like this had ever happened before. After which, Yan began to ask the teenager for forgiveness for what happened to his pet. But Shin began to claim that among the people from the association there were servants of the Dark Regiment. The woman asked him to discuss it in a more private place so that no one would hear about it. Kai's assistant, in turn, managed to hide around the corner, realizing that Chen really wasn't that simple. So, it's time to use the trump card hidden against him. Soon, the protagonist and the Amethyst Snake went to Kei Young's office, where the young master's pet began to be served by crystal beasts. The head of the association noted that the guy had brought a humanoid monster again. She then asked if he had told anyone about the spies within the organization. The young cultivator answered negatively, so Kay guessed that he was the one who destroyed the Dark Regiment. A puzzled Chen asked her in return how she knew about this, and Yang stated that she had her own informers, and this incident was clearly a deliberate act against him, which she also knows. At the same time, she told about the five-tailed fox that was captured by the Dark Regiment, but Jin objected because they took the two-tailed fox. Suddenly, Kay showed him a device called Fandom, which could force the evolution of crystal beasts. She also spoke about the Human Preservation Fund, and it was created to counter invasion from other worlds. Jan led to the fact that, in fact, some people from this foundation collaborated with the Dark Regiment. This is what Chen asked about, but she urged him not to talk about it, and asked him to stay away from the association for a certain time. In order to wait out some events, Ka suddenly said that she had a task for him, and he would need to leave for a short time. However, Shin replied that he was not going to hide from them, especially since he had done nothing wrong. But Yan insisted that someone wanted to kill the young man, and he was acting extremely carefully and could even harm his loved ones. She added that while he was away, she would personally conduct the investigation and would definitely find the culprit. Suddenly, Kay announced that she had already bought tickets for him, at which point Fitz ran up to him and asked him to leave. At this time, the assistant came with bad news to his patron. Kai said that now he would have to disappear, and the only way was death, with Zhang assuring that his family would receive monetary compensation. The stunned guy literally begged him not to do it and to give him another chance. But Kai was determined and killed his subordinate, after which he learned the location of Chen's worst enemy. Naturally, his sister Sibling unknowingly helped him with this, and he became extremely curious to know her reaction to Shin's death. The guy in turn came home and told her about a trip to a tropical island. Luna was delighted, but the teenager noted that the ticket was for him, and she should think about other things. But the girl still did not calm down. Suddenly, Lily entered the room with a sacred sword of wrath. Seeing their rather strange state, the guy asked what had happened to them. Avalon stated that she had done some hard training with them, and they were now much stronger. At the same time, the teenager called the Blade of Wrath by the name Bugsy, which he had given her just recently, which pleased her very much. Suddenly, Chen revealed the Violet Serpent and said that Fitz had finally evolved. Luna, in turn, was only interested in traveling to a tropical island and decided to buy herself a new swimsuit. Suddenly, Avalon called on her new master to buy the others a couple of things. After a certain time, they all set off on an exciting journey together. Everyone was happy to rest and forget about worldly worries, at least for a short while. But when all the girls headed to the locker room, Shin ordered Long to stay with him. Naturally, she was unhappy with the teenager's decision, but suddenly she felt an incredible power nearby. Finally realizing that the sacred sword was nearby, Long immediately reported it to Chen. With a smile on her face, she added that along with this, they would have another beauty. The young man realized that he wouldn't even be able to rest, but he was also curious to find the blade. A couple of minutes later, the pets and their sister Sinya went out to the beach in new swimsuits. At that moment, several vacationers ran past them, shouting that there were ghosts here. The guy immediately turned around and saw an unremarkable girl walking along the beach and humming some song, but a strange aura emanated from her. Suddenly, her eyes flared with magic and she ordered everyone to leave this place. By that time, Avalon had told everyone about the new sacred sword, and of course, they wanted to get it. But Lon urged them to take their time. As the blade's aura was gradually weakening, soon the main character, together with his female team, went to the old man to ask him to give them a guide. Who would have taken them to the rainforest, but Grandpa assured them that this was an extremely bad idea. Threatening that they might anger the god of the tropical jungle, Chen immediately turned his attention to the octopus on the shelf. The old man continued to say that the Almighty can punish everyone who does not follow certain rules, after which he told about a group of poachers who did not believe him and went into the forest. But no one saw them return back, the young master thought. The girls also tensed up, realizing that this was really serious. But the young cultivator said that they were not going to harm the forest. Avalon, in turn, silently listened to the old man's story, realizing that this was another challenge for them. But despite all the legends, they still decided to go deep into the jungle. Moreover, the sacred blade was at stake, which they really wanted to get their hands on. At the same time, Chen urged his sister to take his hand so as not to get lost along the way. Meanwhile, the unknown girl continued to run amok in the jungle. While eliminating a huge number of people, she also forced some to kill. What seemed to give her true feeling was that the owner of the emerald sword did not spare even the local fauna. Suddenly, one of her controlled victims stabbed himself in the neck with a knife, with a smile on his face, which looked creepy enough, but that wasn't enough for her, so she went deeper into the forest. Having sensed the presence of several more people beforehand, Chen moved away from Lily and the others, turning around to ask Sister Luna if she heard the strange melody. Suddenly, the guy saw something indescribable in front of him. Everything was like in a fog. The young man instantly went mad and asked the monster what he had done with his girls. At that moment, an unknown young lady appeared in front of him, and he immediately began to strangle her. In fact, he imagined it all and was strangling Luna. Fitz and Bugsy immediately began to pull him back. Finally, Chen let go of her, and black marks from his fingers remained on his sister's neck. The amethyst snake instantly plunged its owner into a magical shell, trying to bring him to his senses. Bugsy, in turn, tried to help Luna, but suddenly her eyes lit up with a green light, after which she suddenly took off and rushed off in an unknown direction. Lily and Avalon continued to walk through the forest at this time, Lon constantly telling her that she should not be afraid. Following them was the maddened owner of the sacred emerald blade. At a certain moment, the leader of the crystal beast heard an incomprehensible sound. As a result, she turned around and asked Ava if she heard anything strange. But suddenly she saw an unknown woman with a bloody little animal in her arms. Her hair seemed to turn into tentacles, and she asked if the little girl was looking for shelter.